Shem today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah daf Memches 48, and we will begin from daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Let's just review a little bit what we learned yesterday, very late yesterday, about the three houses. The Mishnah said, and we'll skip to just do the Mishnah over here. Shloisha Botenheim. There are three types of houses where the house itself is an Avodah Zarah. If the goy built the house and he's going to worship the walls of the Avodah Zarah, of the walls of the house. Now, why would the goy worship the walls of the house? Because in those days they put an Avodah Zarah, and anything supporting and protecting the Avodah Zarah was also an Avodah Zarah. So if you built the house for an Avodah Zarah, hareze aser, which means that house is prohibited, and what he's trying to say is that in order to use that house, there's no way to do it. The goy has to mevatel the house. He has to take it apart. And if the Yid bought it and he doesn't have a goy to do that, so then he has to smash the house. Sidoy v'kaydel avodah zarah. He has a house. The goy had a house, but instead he put a plaster and cemented some plaster on the wall, and then drew a picture. So now that's the chiddush. He made an addition to the house. So only that is also. So if a Yid would buy that house, noitel masha chiddush, all he has to do is remove what the goy put up, and then he can use the rest of the house. Now there's a third type of house. Hichnis l'seich avodah zarah v'hitzia. If the goy brought an avodah zarah temporarily into a house, so then when the goy removes the avodah zarah, hareze mutter, then it's mutter to use the house. But while the avodah zarah is in the house, you should not be using the house. Now we're up to our Mishnah, which is in the bottom. Shloisha avodim. There are three types of stones that become a problem with avodah zarah. Even shechatzava metchila bimus. Let's say a goy mined a stone from a mountain, let's say, or even if he found a stone, and he using it lebimus to as a base to support his avodah zarah. But in this situation, he not only serves the avodah zarah, but he also serves the foundation, the stone that's holding up the avodah zarah. Hareza usura, so that avodah zarah is aser until the guy breaks off a piece of it and says, "Oh, I don't want to use the stone anymore." Let's say sida v'kidul shem avodah zarah. Let's say he has a stone, and what he did was he added a picture. He plastered a picture onto it for avodah zarah, and now a Jew wants to buy that stone. So noitel mashasid v'chayid u'meteres. All he has to do is remove that extra picture, and the rest of the stone is mutter, because the original intent of that stone was not to be used as an avodah zarah. Only later, when he added the picture, then he used it for avodah zarah. So it's the picture that became the avodah zarah. So if you remove that picture, then you're permitted to use the stone. Hamid oleha avodah zarah v'silka. Let's say he put an avodah zarah on a stone temporarily, and then remove the avodah zarah from that stone. Then harezu muteris. The Jew is allowed to use that stone. Says the Mishnah, on the middle case, Omar Rabami said, "V'hu shesayid v'kayid b'gufa shel Evan." The Gemara understood that the when do you have a problem with the stone is, Rabami said, is only if he engraved into the stone. If he engraved the picture into the stone, then you have to remove that engraving. But if he didn't do that, then the stone is mutter. Says the Gemara, is that true? If he only did a picture on the outside of the stone, is it mutter? Vodumya the bias tanan. We're juxtaposing our Mishnah to the previous Mishnah, which discusses about a house. Ubayis la bagufehud mitzar. And with the house, basically, when you add a picture to a house, you're not engraving into the walls of the house, but you're just adding a picture on the outside of the house. And we see that that picture is aser. So the Gemara says, no, bias nami ika beina urbeit. A bias, you can engrave the picture in the bricks of the house. Maybe that's what that previous Mishnah is talking about. So the Gemara counters and says, in a normal situation, the house is smooth, right? You're not banging and drawing an engraved picture in the house. What you're doing is adding a piece of plaster and then engraving a picture on the plaster. So it's an addition to the house. It's not engraved in the stones of the house. So we have to understand what Rab Ami meant in our Mishnah. Rab Ami is discussing and saying that the if you want to use the stone after he drew a picture, Rabami is saying that even if the Afagav decide v'kayed begufa shel gevin, kinotamat shechide shapadami, even if the goy engraved into the stone, he chiseled into the stone, all you got to do is knock away that picture, that engraving picture, and then it's okay. You could use the rest of the stone. And that is the novelty of what Rabami is trying to say. The Mao the same, I would have thought, Kevan Shasai Vekiva Begufa Shel Eben, since he's engraving into the stone itself, wouldn't that be considered like he's making a brand new stone, as he mined a brand new stone to use the entire stone for Avodah Zarah? V'titasar kula, and the whole stone should be asa. Kamashmal, that's what Rabami is trying to teach you, that if the stone originally was never used for an Avodah Zarah, then the goy started to engrave a picture onto the stone, so only that engraving is aser. You can knock away that engraving, and the rest of the stone is mutter. And that was the novelty of Rabami. New Mishnah. There are three types of tree. Now, you can't, if a goy serves a mountain, obviously the mountain is not aser, correct? But if a goy plants a tree for avodah zarah, that even though he's creating something connected to the ground, that tree is aser. Why? Because he's planting it. So the goy is doing the planting. So Elon Shenatoi Metchil Shem Avodah Zarah. A guy planted a tree for Avodah Zarah. Even if he didn't serve it, as long as his intention was that this tree is going to grow and he's going to serve the tree, Harei Asura, right away the tree is aser. That's one type of Asherah. Let's say you have a regular tree. It was planted long before. Now the guy comes and says Gidoi Upisloi. He prunes the tree, or removes the weeds around the tree, l'shem avodah zarah, so that the tree can grow better. And he wants to worship the new growth of the tree, as an avodah zarah. So hechlif, and the tree actually grew. So all you got to do is noitel mashal hechlif, cut off whatever grew from the tree from the time he did this pruning, and then you could use the rest of the tree. Let's say let's say the goy put a avodah zarah underneath the tree, and then took it away. So as long as the avodah zarah is underneath the tree, and he's not even serving the tree, but this tree is like a protection for that avodah zarah, then it's permitted to use that tree once the avodah zarah is removed from underneath the tree. Amri to Rabbi Yana taught us, Rabbi Ani understood that in order to prohibit the growth of the tree, he has to do something more. He has to actually do grafting. That's hirkiv. Or hivrach means he takes a branch off that tree and replants it into the ground. He takes a branch and that's a long branch and just covers it with dirt into the ground so a new tree could pop up. And only then does the new growth becomes aser. Says the Gemara, is that true? But the Mishnah says that just by pruning it and weeding it, already asers the growth of the tree. So why do you have to do such an intense hirvrich and hikriv? Rabbi Ani's teaching is like this. He's teaching you regarding nullifying an avodah zarah. The afagav, the hivrich, the hikriv, begufay shel ilim, even if the goy grafted another tree into the tree, or he took the branch and sunk it into the ground and tried to grow another tree. So you would think that that's like planting a brand new tree, and therefore, whatever the whole tree becomes aser, even the main where the tree comes from becomes aser. No, kinot masha hichlef. If you just remove whatever grew, shapri dami, that's also okay. The same. I would have thought keeping the hivrek v'hirka begufay shelilin, since you're doing something with the body of the tree, you're not just pruning it, but you're doing something even more. You're planting a new tree from a branch of this tree. So I would think so I would think that not only the growth is aser, but even the original tree that it comes from becomes aser. Kamashmala, no, only the growth is aser. All you got to do is get rid of the growth, and the main tree that where it originated from remains mutter. Amar Shmuel taught us a teaching. Hamashtacha v'le'ilam. A guy goes over to a regular tree that nobody ever served, and he bows to the tree. So Tosefta Asura, that whatever grows after the guy did the bowing, whatever grows, that becomes Asur. So if you remove that growth and you want to use it as firewood, that's Asur. But the tree itself, what's the original part of the tree before the goy bowed to the tree, that remains mutter. So the growth becomes asa, even just by bowing to the tree. So Masav Rab Lazar asked the question, Gidu pisli avodah zarah v'hechlif noita masher hechlif. Gidu pisli en lo gidu pisli loy. From our Mishnah, it seems to imply that the only way to asa growth of a tree is only if you do something more intense, like prune the tree, or weeds, take out the weeds around the tree. But if you just bow to the tree, then whatever grows will not become usher. So how does Shmuel disagree with our Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Amalach Shmuel. Shmuel will tell you, Hamani, the author of our Mishnah, is Rabbanim. Ushmuel, the Amak Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda. Shmuel found a Tana, Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda, who's more stricter. The Amar who said, Elon Shnatoy L'Seif Avodah, let's say Elon was planted, a regular tree, and a guy just bowed to the tree, Asa even becomes Asa. So the question between now, the way Gemara understands, is the machlokes is regarding the growth of the tree if a person just bows to the tree. However, the main part of the tree always remained mutter because it was a tree that was planted not for avodah zarah. So that's the machlokes. The ikar is mutter. Says the Gemara, Maskav Ravashi questioned, Memai to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Rabbanim b'Tosefes pligi. How do you know they're arguing whether the growth becomes usher or not if a person bows to a tree, and that the regular part of the tree, the main part of the tree, always remains mutter? Dilma Tosefes l'divrei hakol usher. Everybody holds the extra becomes usher. The growth is always usher, even the Rabbanim, and therefore our Mishnah is not like Rabbanan or Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Ubi Korei Pligi, they're arguing regarding the main part of the Mishnah, regarding the main part of the tree. The Rabbi Yosef Yehuda saw by Ikar Nami Aser. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda holds that the main part of the tree is Aser. The pasuk says, "Va'asher reihem tisrufu me'esh." Burn all their idol trees, whether, and it's plural, so whether it was planted to be used as an idol, or whether it was a regular tree and the goy bowed to it. That's the source of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Rabbanan hold ikishil and shari. The main part of the tree is also because sometimes the pasuk says ba'ashereihem, their idol trees tegadein, just prune it, and the rest of the tree is muta. Ezehu ilan shegilu also the ikre shari. Which tree would be that the pruning is aser, but the main part of the tree is mutter? Havi Aima, I would say that is Elon Shnatoy L'Seif Avodah. That's a tree that they planted and then they served it. So therefore, their machlekes between Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbanim doesn't concern with the growth of the tree. That's for sure, Asar. But the main part of the tree, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says it's mutter, and Rabbanan say since this tree was never worshipped before, it wasn't planted for avodah zarah, it doesn't become asa. Says the Gemara, if that's the way you want to learn the machlokes, didn't we learn the machlokes Rabbi Yosef Yehuda and Rabbanan was actually the machlokes regarding the growth, not regarding the ikar. Ikar, everybody holds as mutter. So no, Eipech, Rabbanan, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef Rabbanan. I'll turn it around and I'll use the source that like the Gemara just quoted. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda has a source that asks any type of tree, and Rabbanan will differentiate, but everybody will hold that the ikar of the tree remains asa. So now, if that's the case, that the remain. If the ikar of the tree remains aser, and the only machlekes is regarding the growth of the tree, in Kain Gidu Upisla Mankatanu, who could be the author of our Mishnah? Loy Rabbanan, Loy Rabbi Yosef Yehuda cannot be like Rabbanan or Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. I Rabbanan beloy Gidu Pisli Nami Tesefes Asura. If it goes according to Rabbanan, even without just by bowing, the growth is aser. The main part of the tree is mutter, but even without just by bowing to the tree, the growth will be asar. But if you go according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, iki ilanami asar, the main tree would also become asar. Because the way we understand the machlekes between Rabbanan and Rabbi Yosef Yehuda is regarding the growth. The main tree remains the main tree. Regarding the machlekes is regarding the main part of the tree. Everybody holds the toisvis is aser. You bow to a tree, whatever grows remains aser. The question is, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says not only does the growth remain aser, but the tree remains aser. Rabbi Yamnon says no, only the growth is aser, but not the main tree. If that's the case, who's the author of our Mishnah? So the Gemara says, Iba Yisem Rabbanan, Iba Yis Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. I could say it goes like both. Iba Yisem Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. I could say it goes according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Ki Kama Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. When the Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says, B'loi Gidin Pisla, even without pruning it, just by bowing to a tree, Ike Ilin Aser, that the main tree is Aser, Bistama. If you bow to a tree, the goy bows to a tree, any tree in your backyard, the whole tree remains Aser. Whatever grows, it doesn't matter. Aval Gidui Pisli, but if the guy goes and now prunes the tree, so he's showing that he doesn't want the main tree to remain aser. What he is serving is the growth of that tree. That he wants the growth to be aser. That's his avodah zarah. He doesn't need the main part of the tree. Main part of the tree, he doesn't want it to be aser. So therefore, that's the author of our Mishnah. I could say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbanan. Rabbanan say the main tree is aser, the growth is aser, but the main tree is mutter. But gidibit pisli itzrachalei, even just bowing to it, it would be aser. So why did Rabbanan say? Why does the Mishnah say that you need to prune the tree in order to aser the growth? Rabbanan say just by bowing to the tree, the growth becomes aser. I would have thought, even the avalei ma'ase begufe, since you actually prune the tree, let's aser the whole tree. Kamash Milan, no. Rabbanan always say that the main tree remains mutter, but the growth remains aser, whether you bow to the tree or whether you prune the tree. Next Mishnah. Eizehu Eshera. What is an Ashera? That there's a machlekes between Rab Shimon and Rabbanan. You see, we said that if you put a avodah zarah under a tree, so according to Rabbanan, the tree becomes aser. So that's the sheet of the Rabbanan. Kol sheyesh tachta avodah zarah. Even if they're not worshiping the tree becomes aser because the avodah zarah they put underneath the tree an avodah zarah. Rab Shimon says no. Only if they bow to the tree, then the tree is aser. Other than that, the tree is not aser. There's a story in Sidon. People would pass by this tree, and underneath it there was a pile, and the goyim were bowing to the tree, but there was a pile of stones underneath that tree. So we're seeing that according to the Rabbanan, they're bowing to the tree. Amar lehen Rab Shimon says, Bitkus agalazeh. Check what's in the pile of stones. Ubatku matzatzura by Tzura, and then they found an idol, a statue in the amongst the stones. Amar lehen, so Rab Shimon said, Hoil v'tzura einaydim. Their main service is not to the tree itself. They're really servicing the idol that's underneath the tree. Not the lehem as elam. Let's permit the tree. The tree is not aser. So they're not. So you can chop a branch off that tree according to Rab Shimon and use it for firewood. Says the Gemara just explains what I explained in the Mishnah. How could the Mishnah ask what's an Asherah when the previous Mishnah says there are 3 Asherahs? Hachikama. That's what the Mishnah said. Shtaim l'divrei kol. Everybody gives to 2 of the examples. V'achas machlekes Rab Shimon Rabbanim. But one type of Asherah is machlekes Rab Shimon Rabbanim, where they're not worshiping the tree; they're only worshiping the avodah zarah that's underneath the tree. Ezehu asher shnechel kol bar Shimon Mechamim kol shechtachtel avodah zarah. If there's an idol underneath the tree, Rab Shimon, that's the Rabbanan says that's the tree is aser. Rab Shimon Rab Shimon holds as long as they bow to the tree, then the tree is aser. If they're just going to the tree because to serve an idol that's underneath the tree does not become aser. Now the Mishnah says, Ezu Asher Stam. What's called an anonymous? How would you know if they're bowing to the tree itself or they're worshiping a statue underneath the tree? So I could tell you, Amar Rav, because there's a big difference. According to Rab Shimon, According to Shimon, if they're worshiping the idol underneath the tree is mutter. Amar Rav says, Kol shekamerem yoshev tachtav. If you see the monks sitting underneath the tree, the ein toimel miperaser. They're not tasting from the delicious fruits on the tree. So it must be that they're worshiping the tree itself. Even though if you might see an idol there underneath the tree, but if you see they're not eating from the tree itself, then you know they're worshiping the tree also. Shmuel says, even if they're eating from the fruits of the tree, but Afila Amri, they're going to say, you hear them talking, and they say, Hani Tamri Lebein Etzafri. Well, these dates could make great beer for our holiday. Aser. Why? The Rami Edim. Because they could eat the fruits, but really they're protecting, they want the fruits. They want the fruits to make beer for their holiday. So therefore, even if they're eating the fruits, it still could be that they're worshiping the tree itself. Meir says, Amrli Sabit Pupadisa, the elders of Pupadisa says, Hilkis Kishmuel, the halachas like Shmuel, that even if they're eating from the fruits of the tree could remain aser. Okay, now new Mishnah. Lo Yeshiv B'tzila. One is not allowed to sit. We go to Amid Beis, Menches Amid Beis. Lo Yeshiv B'tzila. One is not allowed to sit in the shade of the tree, far away. I'm putting up a picture on the screen. So there are three parts to a tree. The first part is far away from the tree, is called like extended shade. Because if you put the tree down, if the tree fell, so then it wouldn't reach to where the shade extends. So where I have here number one, that's called the extended shade of the tree. And then you have the shade of the tree, which is number two. And then you have three underneath the tree. Now, underneath the tree, we're going to learn you're not allowed to walk underneath the tree of an Asherah tree. Why? Because they would use sacrifice animals for the tree. And once they sacrifice an animal, that's like having a dead person underneath the tree, and you're in the tent, you're in the oil of the tree, and you're going to become tamei. You shouldn't even stay there for a minute, not because we just don't want you to be close to Avodah Zarah. If you're in the shade of the tree but not underneath the tree, so then you're just benefiting from the tree. We're going to learn you shouldn't do that. Benefit from the tree. So let's see the Mishnah. Lo yesha b'tzila. A person should not, he's far away from the tree. He should not sit in the shade of the tree. Vim Yashav, if he did sit in the shade of his tree, he's tar because he's not underneath the tree. But don't go underneath the tree, because there they would sacrifice animals underneath the tree. And if you're underneath the tree at the same time that they have an animal sacrifice there, you're going to become tamei. Vim avar tamei. You're going to become tamei. Hoisa gazelis is a rabbin, but let's say the tree, it was, they made it, the goy made it on his property, but the tree overlaps into the Rishus Harabim, and you ended up going underneath the tree, so then you're tar. Why? Because this whole idea that you become tamei because they sacrifice an animal underneath the tree is only midrabanan, and therefore, if there's no other way out, if you're forced to go and underneath the tree, so then the rabbanan didn't make a gzera, and you'll remain tarmi. Says the Gemara, Le'yeshiv b'tzila, you shouldn't sit in the shade. Pshita, of course, you're benefiting from the Avodah Zarah tree. The extended part of the shade. Michlal, the tzails, kaimasa, but I would think that the shade, im yashav tamei, would you be tamei if you just went into the shade? Because the Mishnah says don't be in the extended part, but would you be tamei if you just went into the shade? Loid. I feel it's el kamas namim yashav taro. V'hal kamashman the feel it's el tzil yashav. The way the Gemara understands it now, the way the Gemara is always going to understand it. You're not allowed to even be in spot number one, far away from the tree, very far away from the tree, because you're benefiting from the shade, and that's called the extended shade. But even in the shade of the tree, albeit not underneath the tree, you shouldn't be there either, for sure. But the chiddush is that even far away from the tree, you shouldn't be. And underneath the tree, you shouldn't even go there at all, because you'll become tamei. Ika damasnila aseifa. Some say this idea, the same idea of the seifa thing. Yashav tahar pshita. If you went underneath the shade, you're tahar. Of course, you're not near an animal. If you're just in the shade, if you're in the shade of the height of the tree. Would that imply that if you're in the extended part of the shade of the tree, you could actually sit there and in the sun? Loy, hakamashmanda. Fil itzel kamosinam yoshav tar. The idea is that if you're in spot number 2, you're going to be tahar. If you're in spot number 2, you're going to be tahar. And you just can't be there, of course, because you're benefiting from the shade. And also in spot number 1, you can't be there because you're benefiting from the shade. Only in spot number 3, right underneath the tree, you're not supposed to be there because you become tameh. My tama, my tama. And because there's takrevus avodah zarah, that's why you're going to become tummy. Mani, who's the author of Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda ben Seri. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Seri. How do I know if a goy slaughters an animal for an avodah zarah, that mitama the whole room? That any slaughtering done for avodah zarah is like a dead body. Just like a dead body can be matama the room, so also a slaughtering for the avodah zarah is matama anything underneath the tent. Therefore, if you're underneath the tree, you're going to become tameh. But hoisa gazelis is ram over tachter tar. Yiboilu over or over. If are you allowed to the eved go if it's blocking the public thoroughfare? Or you're lechatchila allowed to go. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar b'Shmini Chizkiyahu over. You're allowed to lechatchila go. Rabbi Yochanan Amma im over. B'diavad you should go there. If you have another way to go around, don't go underneath the avodah zarah tree, even if it's blocking the Rishus Rabbah. Go around it. If you have no other way, have no other choice, then you're lechatchila allowed to go underneath the tree, and you will not become tameh, because since it's in the Rishus Rabbah, they had no right to plant the tree and cause tum in the Rishus Rabbah. Finally, we'll finish up with this story. Rav Sheshes was blind and he had somebody leading him. He told his servant, when you get to that tree, rush me. So why did he ask to be rushed? Hey, chidami. What's Rav Sheshes telling his servant? If there was no other way around to get around that tree, lama li aharitna, why did he have to run? There's Mishra Shari. It's totally permitted. But if Rav Sheshes had a way to go around the tree, then why did he tell him rush me through it? He should have gone in another roundabout way to avoid the tree, even though it's blocking the Rishus Rabbah, but you have another way around it. Answers the Gemara, the story of Rav Sheshes was the Lake of Dirka Achrina. Rav Sheshes was going in a place where there's no other way to go around the tree. The tree took over the whole Shus Rabbim, and he had to go underneath the tree. So really, he could have walked leisurely underneath the tree, but he told his servant to rush me because of Adam Chashashani. He's an Adam Chashav, so he has to be even more careful to just rush quickly past the tree, so as people shouldn't think that he's dilly-dallying underneath an Avodah Zarah tree. Okay, so we will stop over here and continue with the Mishnah tomorrow. B'ez Hashem, Daf Mem Ches was just finished.